No data, no problem. Zabu allows you to buy or sell securities on the Altex exchange from anywhere in Uganda via USSD. Step 1. To buy, dial *292#. Step 2. Select buy. Step 3. Select the product you would like to buy. For example, bonds. Step 4. Select your preferred maturity year. Step 5. Select the bond you would like to buy. Step 6. Input an amount of 15,000 Ugandan shillings or more. Step 7. Your order has been forwarded for processing. And finally, Step 8. Your order has been confirmed.
A very warm welcome to the program once again. Thank you for tuning into Smart 24 TV. We drive your business. Welcome back from that interview there with Gloria and Andrew on blockchain and digital currencies. That's how we do it here in financial markets. We give you the latest on what is trending, especially within the financial markets. And digital currencies and blockchain technology are indispensable to the cause of financial markets. Now I'm here with my very great co-host Victor to take you through another round of market analysis. Right, Victor?
Well, yes, thank you, Anthony. So, of course, as we are going to do it today, as for today's updates, we are going to start with the Uganda Securities Exchange as of yesterday's trading session. And of course, at the end of the trading session, we saw a total of 2,001,404 shares, corresponding to a market value of 105,077,649 Ugandan shillings. So how do you make it?
Well, comparing to the previous day, the data shows a 67% improvement in the volumes, and as well a 159% improvement in the turnover. The markets have been through a long holiday. If you remember, through Independence Day, Saturday and Sunday, the markets were closed, and they opened up on Tuesday with a little bit of slow activity. We saw that activity actually slightly declining even further on Wednesday. But now with the current data, we're seeing that there's been a lot of improvement with the volumes and the turnover. I think the investors are now back to work from the long holiday. You know, holidays are always a time for investors also to reflect back and also get time to resettle their portfolios and the faults they're in. So I think it's a very good move, and hopefully by the end of this week, we shall even be having better numbers.
Okay. So, of course, compared with the previous trading session, the data shows a 67% improvement in volume and a 159% improvement in turnover. Yeah. The market capitalization still stands at 16 trillion Ugandan shillings. So I feel like the market capitalization still staying at 16 trillion is not as much as, it's not impressive, but of course at least we're seeing some action, and we're seeing trades happening, we're seeing shares exchanging hands, and I think a 67 improvement in volume, of course, as well as 159% in turnover these are very encouraging results.
Absolutely. But however, Victor, I want to just reflect. In just a few months, about 24 months ago, about 2 years ago, the market capitalization of Uganda crossed the 20 trillion mark. Now, us being at 16 trillion, there's nothing much to celebrate, given that the fact that our markets are still growing. We hoped for better by this time, because during COVID-19, people said we don't have money. Everyone was just keeping their money for the future investments, for probably recouping their money after the losses they made during COVID, after businesses were closed for a very long time. But that's not exactly what we saw. We are seeing now the market capitalization at 16 trillion. Over 4 trillion has been lost in the last 2 years. COVID-19 stopped around, actually didn't stop, but started phasing out by at least 2021, if I'm not mistaken. Now we are at the close of 2023, and the market capitalization has declined this much. I do believe the Capital Markets Authority has a lot to do about this, and maybe the listing of Airtel Uganda could be offering one of the solutions by, of course, getting us new investors coming on board, and this could boost as well our markets.
You think it could play as they have possibly planned it out?
Well, given the current market conditions and the inflation that we are seeing, as we're going to, of course, get through the inflation data later, fuel prices rising, I think the IPO might be affected somehow, but there's still a lot of hope that even when it's undersubscribed to, which is the most likely occurrence, there will still be a good number of new investors. Because what we're interested in any IPO is not the old investors, because they will still have the same accounts, right? They still have the same SCD accounts. Remember, in Uganda, we are comparing, for example, with Kenya. Kenya has close to 1 million investors. Us, we have about just 100,000 accounts. 100,000 out of 45 million people. That shows you how weak we still haven't, we haven't penetrated the population. And if Airtel IPO, maybe even when undersubscribed to, could get us at least half of the people in the IPO as new investors, that would be a goal.
Well, of course, in aggregate, we have 5 Uganda Securities Exchange listed equities that participated within the trading. So, of course, we have 7 gainers and 2 losers. And we are seeing Jubilee Holdings a 0.08% price appreciation, of course closing at 4,733.84 Ugandan shillings per share. So of course followed by that we have the East African breweries that also had a price appreciation of 0.08%, and of course it closed at 4,000 Ugandan shillings per share as well. So of course we're seeing Equity Bank also having 0.08% appreciation, and of course the share price still remains the same, around 4,000 Ugandan shillings. And the 2 losers, we have DFCU, which is showing a depreciation of 14.77%, and Bank of Baroda showing a depreciation of 0.2%. We also have Stanbic Bank Uganda, and this one in particular recorded the highest volume of 1.39 million traded shares. And surprisingly, it was followed by Bank of Uganda as well, showing 433,472, and Umeme showing 94,507, as well as MTN Uganda with 85,725. So of course, going into more insights on the gainers and the losers, what do you think about these specific listings?
Well, Victor, when you look at, first of all, have a look at the bottom losers. All these are cross-listed stocks, which is something we are seeing more often on the exchange. The cross-listed stocks today all gain, and then the next day they all lose. That shows you how volatile our markets are, and especially on the cross-listed counters. Cross-listed counters usually do move not because people are trading on them. They move due to external factors. Forces of demand and supply are not so much in play when we talk about cross listings. You rarely find any volumes traded on them. You rarely find any activity, right? But according to Bank of Uganda, the report they produced just this week, it shows that the foreign currency depreciation and rising fuel prices could be some of the things that are bombarding the economies right now. And this is not for Uganda exclusively, but also in Kenya. Now, the movements we are seeing, for example, on the Kenyan counters like Jubilee Holdings, like East African Breweries Limited, are due to some of these forces of inflation and foreign currency depreciation. If you agree with me, the Kenyan shillings has depreciated greatly this year. And one of the things that, it has been up and down, and one of the things that we see on the exchange is what is happening in Kenya right now. right? Kenya has the strongest markets in East Africa, and these cross listings give us a picture of, or a feel of what's happening out there in Kenya.
Of course.
And this translates also back to Uganda, because we are seeing the bottom losers as well here, as DFCU Bank losing about 14.77%, and then Bank of Baroda losing about 0.2%, down to 14.97. Now, if we go to the specifics for DFCU Bank, for example, they traded just about 2,500 shares and lost 39 shillings on that. That means the traders on this particular counter yesterday felt like they needed to sell out, and the offer as low as 225, which led to a decline of the 39 Ugandan shillings. But also, Victor, I would want to remind you that being one of those banks that has gone through a very challenging time, especially after a drought of dividends. For almost 2 years, they were unable to issue dividends, one under the pressure from the Bank of Uganda to hold funds during COVID-19 period, where the suspension of dividend issuance was one of the recommended, actually one of the orders given by Bank of Uganda in order to reserve capital to have funds secured just after the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, DFCU this year had some good news for their investors. For the first time in over 2 years, DFCU paid out a total of 6.12 billion Ugandan shillings worth of dividends to about its 748.1 million shareholders. Now, that, imagine, would be very good news, and it was good news for a brief period of time.
And the number of shareholders is also quite amazing, judging by the time they took to give out these dividends.
Yeah.
You might imagine so many investors decided to pull out.
Yes.
But the number is still a big one.
Yeah, and these are the number of shares that they're having currently. But when you look at their dividend issuance per share, they were issuing 8.19 shillings per share. That is for their dividend that was paid for last year's performance. The payment comes after 2 years without any dividend. Now, you can imagine someone has waited 2 years, and they have 1,000 shares. I usually want to use 1,000 shares because imagine a stock like bank, or rather DFCU Bank, at an average of 300, let's say. That means for some investor, he has about 300,000 in there, and you're giving that's 1,000 shares, right? And you're giving them 8.19 shillings per share after 2 years of no dividend. Now that's 8,000. 8,000 after 2 years. If someone was doing business, maybe even if they had made losses, honestly, they would have recouped their investment even after 2 years,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
So I don't think the investors felt good enough after this dividend, and this is exactly how they are reacting. This is how they are reacting. They are moving out, and the company's stock is being affected. That is for the case of DFCU Bank. However, I think with time, given the space now that the bank has, and also some of the tight regulations that are coming in by Bank of Uganda, the bank has hope that they will be able to have more profit and more dividends. In Uganda, trust me, the market is mainly driven by dividends. You don't issue dividends, you have no say in the market.
Now, of course, as much as we also went deeper into the DFCU situation, could you have any more insights on probably what is going on with Equity Bank?
Well, Equity Bank, in this case, remember, Equity Bank, yes, we have a subsidiary here in Uganda, Equity Bank Uganda, but it's mainly, it's a Kenyan company. And some of the things that you're seeing in KCB, for example, in Equity, is exactly what we are seeing right now happening in Equity Bank. For Equity Bank, we are seeing yesterday they gained slightly, about a value of 0.08%, which is really peanuts, to 920 shillings. However, there is no activity. There's no activity on the counter, and recently there have been various reports of people having their deposits kept by the bank, not having access.
Before you go further into the whole deposits issue, how exactly are we supposed to gauge activity? at the counter, within the back offices, within Treasury? How exactly are we supposed to understand that there is activity or there is actually nothing going on?
Whenever you don't have any, even when the price is going up, but you don't have shares being bought, there's no activity. There's no activity, and that can hamper the performance of the stock. Equity Bank, for example, we're just looking at an average, just the average performance. They have 3.7 billion shares, a market capitalization of 3.41 trillion, but their last trade, in this year, they haven't had a single trade. At least their last trade was in 2022. And if I'm not mistaken, it wasn't more than 1,000 shares. That is in a whole year. Now, in a market that is not liquid and you have inactivity, you're definitely not going to gain much. You're not going to gain much, and so are your shareholders.
Certainly. So, of course, moving on to the performance of the Uganda Securities Market Indices, we are looking at the benchmark, which is, of course, the All-Share Index. It paired 1.31, actually giving us a depreciation of 0.14% points to close at 923.89. So, of course, this represented a 1 week loss of 0.2% and a 4 week loss of 1.89%, as well as an overall year-to-date loss of 23.81%. So we also have the Uganda Securities Exchange Local Company Index, that also decreased by 0.39%. Of course, closing at 279.19 points. We have the Uganda, of course, it made a 1 week loss of 0.26%, as well as a 4 week loss of a 4 week gain, of 1.66%, and a year-to-date gain of 2.39%. So, of course, I'm imagining you have more insights on these particular indices.
Well, the indices give us an average performance, and looking at the local company index, it's quite disappointing because it has been improving. You've seen, for example, Stanbic Bank over the last 1 week has been able to accrue some value on their stock, rising to 32 shillings. That is a record high price on a stock that is highly active and also very good at issuing dividends and performing well as well in the economy. So this is a letdown from especially DFCU's performance, which affected negatively the local company index. Now we are looking at still 279.19 points, slightly declining by 0.39%. But you're seeing that the 1 week gains are still at 0.26%. Because of the very good performance of Stanbic and Wumeme, stocks like Stanbic and Wumeme that are keeping the local company index very strong. I wouldn't want to look at the all-share index so much. Why? Because first of all, it involves all the other stocks, the cross-listed stocks that are inactive and give us a negative impression or an untrue impression of the markets. But the local company index really gives us the true picture of the active stocks on the market. And the active stocks on the market are saying we are still resilient. 4 week gains of 1.66% and that's wonderful, despite the fact that stocks like Bank of Baroda and DFCU lost some value yesterday. But I want to draw your attention to Stanbic Bank Uganda. Look at the volume Stanbic had yesterday, 1.385 million shares in just a single day, and they maintained their price at 32 shillings. That means investors, even after this very huge gain, they're still comfortable with Stanbic's performance. And this is where I really want to urge our investors to make sure they make enough research and study of some of the companies they are investing in. A company where someone can afford to buy, and these are not so many deals. You could find these are probably 5 deals or something. 1.3 million shares bought, and the price is still stable.
And of course, I would want to highlight that Stanbic Bank is the most traded stock on the Uganda Securities Exchange, and this has been so for the past 3 months.
Yeah.
We are talking since July 7th to date, actually.
Absolutely.
So Stanbic Bank of Uganda has a traded volume of 16.2 million shares, and of course this added up to 464 million over the period, giving us an average, of course, of 256,517 traded shares per session. This is indeed remarkable.
Absolutely. And Stanbic has done it so well in that they are on the ground. They are doing financial literacy campaigns. They are engaging in technology. They are also innovating, right, and providing solutions. Now, when the community sees what your company is doing outside the business and they are investors in the business, they are willing to dish out more cash to invest because they are seeing the value that the company is adding to the society and also to the industry, the financial industry as a whole. Stanbic Bank made a profit of 366 billion last year over 2022. The year ended in December 2022. And they increased, that is the profit margin, increasing from 275 billion the previous year. And that was also an increase from the 245 billion in the other year. That shows you how great and significant the bank is when it comes to moving in the market.
And of course, personally, I feel like I trust Stanbic Bank's strategy, and the team that, of course, is responsible for creating these strategies really puts a lot of work into making sure that it's providing only productivity and productivity alone.
Absolutely.
So, of course, we'd want to move all the way to Nairobi
After the break.
Thank
you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back. This is Anthony. We are with Victor, and we are giving you a fresh breakdown of the performance of the different stocks here in East Africa. Stay with us. Smart 24 TV, we drive your business.
No data, no problem. Zabu allows you to buy or sell securities on the Altex exchange from anywhere in Uganda via USSD. Step 1. To buy, dial *292#. Step 2. Select buy. Step 3. Select the product you would like to buy. For example, bonds. Step 4. Select your preferred maturity year. Step 5. Select the bond you would like to buy. Step 6. Input an amount of 15,000 Ugandan shillings or more. Step 7. Your order has been forwarded for processing. And finally, Step 8. Your order has been confirmed. Smart 24, driving business.
Pay or shop with